Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. We are here for the fourth in a 25-ish part series as we journey two chapters at a time through Holly by Stephen King. There is, let's just go to it here. There is a reading list. If I forget to post it in the description, I will put it up on screen right now really fast. And there we go. So just freeze frame that however you want to do it and look at it. Look at it now before it's gone. I can't believe I'll be reading this until July. Surely we can do something to... Oh, no. January. I was going to say, what? July is the dates in the book. Stephen, don't do a book like this again. You're making me angry. Last time I had to stop record. I didn't stop recording. I recorded the video, edited the video, uploaded the video, made a thumbnail for the video, and then decided I've got to delete this. I didn't like my tenor in that video. This video not going to be quite as bad. A lot of stuff to talk about. So let's get into it. There will be a So What Happened portion of this video, a Lit Crit portion of the video, and finally a Writer's Corner portion of the video. So what happened in these two chapters? We get an 11-year-old child running around pretending to be Jackie Chan. This is Stinky. He gets abducted. It's basically the whole chapter there. Cut to Holly and Jerome still talking to the kids. They talk about Stinky's disappearance. Jerome says he'll find out more about Stinky. He'll talk to the mother, etc. Holly goes to the park. She needs some time to do some thinking. She asks Jerome, texts him and says, hey, ask Stinky's mom about the skateboard. Does she still have the skateboard? Then she returns a phone call on her phone, I suppose that makes sense, to a name that she vaguely recognizes but can't quite place. Once the name answers, she realizes it is her dead mother's lawyer. It's about the inheritance. Holly says, look, I don't want to think about it, let's just sell it. Sell the house. Is that what you mean, Holly? Yeah, sell the house. I don't want it. I don't want any of the things. And the lawyer says, well, I've got a lot of experience with this. Why don't you come down? We'll look at the stuff. We'll make an appointment, look at the stuff. There's going to be something, inevitably. There will be something you want. And congratulations. Congratulations? Well, you are very wealthy now. Oh, how? Turns out, Holly's mother did leave her the house and the furniture and $6 million. So let's get into the Lit Crit portion of this. I have on the writer's corner but one talking point, and I think that talking point is something that could very easily be left in the Lit Crit portion. But the examples for the talking point that I want to give did not. They made it fit better into a writer's corner portion of the video on 71. On that long ago day, he, Stinky, walked towards Neil Armstrong Elementary School, where he was currently enrolled in Mrs. Stark's third grade class. He was pretending to be Jackie Chan. This is an 11-year-old child in 2018. He was born in 2007. No, Stephen King, not only was he not pretending to be Jackie Chan, he didn't know who Jackie Chan was. He's this kid nicknamed Stinky. Perhaps the funny guy in the group is nicknamed, I don't know, Buster Keaton? Is there a tall guy in the group? Probably they would call him Wilt. Wilt Chamberlain. What are you talking about, Stephen? Uh, this is the second book in a row where a young person has made. So there's a difference between making a reference that is out of date for someone who might be making the reference, and making a reference to someone who is so obscured by the sands of time that it becomes kind of a pink elephant. So if this person were to say, look, I don't even know who Will Smith. If the kid were to say he was pretending to be Will Smith, okay, I guess kind of you've got to believe it. But this kid is making Jackie Chan references. Not exactly the most obscure reference, but to a kid walking around in 2018, I think Jackie Chan's last movie that I knew about was in 2018, maybe. But it was not one that went over well. Prior to that, it would have been The Karate Kid, right? I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about their 2011, 2010, maybe? The kid would have been 3, and he wasn't the action star in that movie. He was the Mr. Miyagi role in that movie. So, I mean, maybe he does. But isn't it strange that you pick Jackie Chan for a kid this age? On 73, we get this about the abductors. Roddy and Emily take turns being the one stranded in the dead wheelchair. Well, I'm glad that they believe in playing fair games. I'm glad that they believe in taking turns. But if Emily really does have a sciatica problem, this is just the two of them begging to be caught. This is just the two of them begging to be caught. If they are taking turns with the physical role in abducting people that they are going to serially murder and apparently sacrifice somehow, if they are taking turns in that, despite the fact that, I mean, sciatica is nothing to play with. It doesn't, I don't think, actually affect your strength, but the pain to it will make you think that it did. From what I understand with a sciatica, I had a bit of a sciatica problem in high school. There is no real strength inhibition. There's no real inhibiting your strength to that injury, but you will feel powerless once it hits. If they're taking turns on who's going to be the physical one in abducting someone, it's just silly. On 75 through 76, we get this sort of... You have here a group of teenagers, 13 I think now, right? Because Stinky disappeared at 11. You're here in 2021, 13, 14 years old kids talking very nonchalantly about the fact that one of their friends from just a couple years ago, one of their friends disappeared and no one knows what happened to him. Years ago, this isn't last week. This isn't yesterday. This isn't, oh, well, we're still looking for him. This isn't maybe he ran away for the weekend. This is the kid disappeared and was probably brutally murdered. That's exactly what you believe when a child goes missing for years. And they're just kind of nonchalant. They're out on their own, playing around. Apparently, this abduction had no effect on these kids' parents. It has no effect on them. Really. This is just a weird set of chapters. Maybe I'm being too persnickety. Maybe I am noticing things that should not be noticed. maybe I am being maybe I am being overly judgmental on a text that does not deserve it. I just don't understand some of these things. And we got a little bit of this in it. But in it, the parents being sort of aloof to things was written into the story because it was sort of the town itself that was under some type of haze. There was something paranormal and spooky going on, and everyone was a little bit a victim of it. We had this in it. The best example of that for me is the constant finding of tagging, the constant finding of graffiti, the constant finding of things scratched under a desk. And it's never Johnny Loves Sally in that book. In Derry, the graffiti that is found is always of the seedy underbelly. The graffiti that is found is often of the variety that would make someone wince. It is often sort of like your worst thoughts. So we get this sort of idea that it's Derry itself that is really having this effect on people. And that's why nothing makes sense. That's why people don't really question their kids going missing, all of these sorts of things. But here we don't have that. We don't really have that sort of, we don't have Pennywise reigning supreme over this town. These are just kids that are ignoring the fact that their friend has gone missing. And then on 79, we get one of the most compellingly strange statements, unless I am missing something. We have Holly thinking about the case with Bonnie. She's on her own. She's just thinking about it. She's trying to figure it out. The helmet piece, the detail about the helmet being found doesn't make sense to her. She's got the earrings. She's pretty sure it's Bonnie's. That points towards violent abduction. She can't place why the bike was where it was, and she comes to this moment of clarity. As for the other possibility, leaving town on the spur of the moment, how likely is that, really? A teenager might suddenly decide it was all too much and bug out. Holly entertained such fantasies for herself while in high school. But a 24-year-old woman with a job she apparently enjoyed? What about her last paycheck? Is it sitting in her boss's office? And no suitcase, just the stuff in her backpack. Holly doesn't believe it. You're telling me that it's more realistic that a teenager, a high schooler, up and jumps ship, up and skirts out of town, a high schooler, is more likely to find the means and the chutzpah to get all the way out of town than a 24-year-old who I believe, did I misinterpret this? Am I misremembering something? A 24-year-old that still lives at home with a fairly well-off mother, she's less likely to be, she's less likely to be spoiled than a teenager who has no idea about how the world works. She's less likely to find the gumption to go and start her life anew someplace else than a 17-year-old. No, I don't think that's true. Might run away for the weekend, a teenager. Might decide I'm getting away and end up at her friend's house, where her friend's parents end up in contact with her mom. All of these sorts of things may be more likely. You are more likely to sleep on a friend's couch perhaps at 17 than you are at 24. But a grown woman deciding to move town is unlikely? Is this Bizarro World? Has Stephen King never been a real person? Stephen King, I believe, was 28 when Carrie was published. I mean, he was a grown man, had a career as a teacher, was living in the real world, struggling paycheck to paycheck. An adult is less likely to change their life than a teenager. Maybe, okay. Maybe. I think that adults uproot themselves all the time, especially ones without children or relationships. And then we get this. 84 and 85. Holly Gibney proves to be irrefutably an awful character. She asks once her mother's lawyer tells her she's going to be wealthy. What do you mean? Well, adding in her bank account and the current value of her stock portfolio, David Emerson says, I'd put your inheritance at just over $6 million. Assuming you outlive Henry Soroy, there will be another $3 million. And it was never lost? Never stolen by an investment specialist who had my mother's and uncle's power of attorney? No. I'm not sure how you got that idea, but in a growl utterly unlike her soft tone of voice, Holly says, because she told me. You mean to tell me that I am about to spend 450 pages with a character that is so snotty, with a character who is so ungrateful, such an ungrateful wretch of a snotball, that upon finding out that she has inherited around $6 million, with the possibility of it being $10 million, $10 million, $9 million, she's just found out that she is a multi-millionaire. And her reaction is, because she told me she lost it. That's the character we're with? That's the character who has an entire novel named after her? And by the way, Stephen King is playing this character off straight-faced as the baby face. Not the heel. Not as Chinaski from Charles Bukowski's poems. Not someone who's kind of a wretch and knows it and is struggling with it, but sometimes he decides not to struggle with it and just be the wretch. No, Holly Gibney is supposed to be an angel. We're supposed to like Holly. We're supposed to be with Holly 100%. Now, I had a strange interaction today. I was reading this book in public, and I don't know how the guy knew what I was reading because it was on the table. But he comes up to me and he says, hey, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I finished it over the weekend. I said, really? Yeah, I really loved it. How'd you feel about Fairy Tale? I asked him. Oh, it was so great. It was so nice to see something different from Stephen King. I have to realize at this point, it must just be me. It must be me that doesn't understand here. It must be me that is out of place. It must be me who came into this book with false expectations. Now, false expectations, a strange sight on reality, maybe warped senses in general. Let's get to the writer's corner portion of this. Timelessness or timeliness. How do I want to go about this? Okay. Ernest Hemingway was born in 1899. F. Scott Fitzgerald was born in 1896. William Faulkner, born 1897 or 1898. Can't remember. One or the other. Meaning the pandemic of 1918, Spanish flu, however you want to say it, the flu of 1918. These guys were all in their early 20s when the Spanish flu broke out. By the way, Spanish flu didn't come from Spain. Spanish flu was called the Spanish flu because the media in Spain allowed the disease to be reported about. They didn't hide the numbers. They didn't fudge the numbers. They didn't say it was something it wasn't. They just let the media go about it. So that was the only place in the world that was reporting on the numbers fairly and accurately, etc. And that's why it is called the Spanish flu. They think that the flu actually broke out in the West from Kansas. So that is what it is. It's interesting to think about, whatever. Anyway, Ernest Hemingway, William Faulkner, F. Scott Fitzgerald, three literary juggernauts of their day. Three literary juggernauts of their day would have been in their 20s for the flu of 1918. The interesting thing is, I think Hemingway has one short story about it. I can't remember what it was called. A Day's Wait. A Day's Wait? I think it's called A Day's Wait. It's about a boy catching a flu, having a really high fever, and his dad or his grandpa is told about it. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, it's about the human part of it. What do you do when someone who is important to you catches this thing? I'm sure there is a mention of it in A Farewell to Arms. I read A Farewell to Arms 15 years ago. I don't remember any talk about it in there, which is proof enough that it was not the focus of the novel. Ernest Hemingway, those are both works by Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway drove ambulances for Italy in World War I. Ran away, lied about his age. There's a little bit of, how much action did he really see? Either way. So here's the terrifying thing about the flu of 1812 or 1818. Pardon me. That pandemic was contingent upon really terrifying stuff. It turned your immune system against you, which meant the younger, the more fit, the healthier you were, the more active your immune system would be, meaning it would kill you. Terrifying stuff. Absolutely brutal stuff. This appears in one Hemingway short story, to the best of my... Look, I didn't look it up. I didn't go through all of the Ernest Hemingway short stories. I don't know what all of his novels are about. I think there's one about a sickness, but it's not that sickness. But, of course, if it's not about that sickness, it is about that sickness because you lived through that, etc. That was a big deal. Flu of 1918 killed a lot of people, and it killed the strongest among us. Terrifying. I have not read all of Faulkner's works. From what I have read, I don't remember a single mention of it. Then you have F. Scott Fitzgerald. I believe it takes place, or the Spanish flu has a mention in one of his short stories similar to A Day's Wait by Hemingway. A Day's Wait? That doesn't sound right to me. Anyway, I believe he talks about it in one of his short stories. F. Scott Fitzgerald, complete germaphobe, complete paranoid. If anybody was going to make a big deal out of a big deal that was the flu of 1918, it would have been F. Scott Fitzgerald. Never did it. I will grant you the worst numbers you want to come up with about COVID. I'll let you have them. I don't know. I will grant them to you. The worst numbers. You can make them up if you want to. Nothing from those few years was as terrifying as the Spanish flu. For the reasons I explicated, the Spanish flu took the healthiest among us, and it was the worst for them. The strongest among us would have the worst time with it because it activated your immune system against you. Terrifying stuff. None of those literary giants, Ernest Hemingway, William Faulkner, F. Scott Fitzgerald, made a great big deal about that. And they would have been early 20s for a disease that was brutal to men in their early 20s. Hemingway would have seen a lot of it being in Europe. So I think this begs the question, when you are putting together a work, this novel is more about COVID than the Hemingway short story was about the Spanish flu. In that, this is about the protocols. This is about the paranoia around the disease. This is about all of the little things that time stamp those years in our lives. It's about all of those things. Do you want to make a piece that is timeless, like Hemingway, like Faulkner, like F. Scott Fitzgerald, or one that embarks on timeliness? I think this is a big question. There was Bret Easton Ellis used to say that it was frowned upon in his creative writing classes. Bret Easton Ellis, American Psycho, Lunar Park, Less Than Zero, all these novels would be, in my opinion, the greatest novelist of our age if he would just concentrate on it. Said that he was told not to use current music, not to mention current music in his stories. He did it. But he did it in a way where the characters are fascinated by the music, not in a way that the story is influenced by the music. So it remains, in a way, timeless. This novel is time-stamped for those few years. Why do we in 2023 want to be reading about these events in 2021? Maybe there's a good reason. Not saying my viewpoint on this is absolute. I don't think people are as interested in it as Stephen King seems to imply by making an entire novel about this time frame. That's all I have for this video. If you enjoy or appreciate what it is that I do here on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping 4, 5, 6, 7, sometimes more videos, sometimes less. There's poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next video.